Welcome back to the report. Now, the United Arab Emirates has added a number of international organisations, including the British charity Islamic Relief, to its list of terrorist groups. Sarah Saey looks at the reactions to this story.
On Saturday, many Muslim groups and institutions were shocked to discover their name on a list of banned terrorist organisations. Now, this list that I have in front of me, which was approved by the Cabinet of the United Arab Emirates, contains groups such as the Islamic State, Boko Haram, various offshoots of the Muslim Brotherhood, but also some British organisations and charities such as Islamic Relief, the Cordoba Foundation and the Muslim Association of Britain. Today, the Muslim Association of Britain held a press conference at their centre in West London to address the accusation.
Without doubt, when this list was put forward, we did question in our minds what are the reasons, but it is not for us as an organisation to place the motives and to speculate on why they have done such a move. Rather,
while the Muslim Association of Britain didn't want to engage in speculation over why they may have been included on the list, preferring to wait for an explanation from the Arab nation, their inclusion appears to underscore the Gulf nation's concern for Muslim groups that may be opposed to Gulf monarchic rule. Yet, even still, the list does seem very odd. Jim Walsh, an expert in international security, noted that some of the groups listed were merely cultural and civic organisations. He said, you have people from across the spectrum, some completely devoted to violence and some who don't seem to be involved in violence at all. There are also concerns that lists like these may serve to stoke already growing hostility towards Muslim organisations in Britain today.
Yes, we feel that this list, first of all, has the potential to increase Islamophobia in the West, because far-right groups, extreme hardliners, will see this list as maybe a kind of reason for them to increase their abuse or attack against Muslims, because if a Muslim country which is based in the Middle East is describing organizations like this as terrorists, then it's almost like a free warrant for them to take kind of action against Muslims. Secondly, we believe that this is not helpful because organizations like ourselves are actually organizations which work to combat extremism and terrorism. So by doing this, what they're trying to say is that, in fact, even moderate organizations are extremists in their eye, not just extremists, terrorists in their eyes. So it's a very negative perception that they are giving to the outer world, and we believe that it's going to be damaging.
With so many puzzled over this newest list of terrorist organisations, we've yet to see what the real impact will be. But with the terrorist label being pinned to an ever-increasing and diverse number of Muslim organisations, there will be deepening concern within all Muslim groups about what lies ahead. Sarah Saey, The Report.
Well, the UK Charity Commission told us this afternoon that it's not investigating the charity Islamic Relief. Well, with me to discuss this in the studio is Mohamed, Secretary of Egypt's Freedom and Justice Party in the UK. Joining us on Skype from Florida is Cyrus Mcgoldrick, former Advocacy Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. And again, here in the studio is Rori Donaghy, who writes for the Middle East Eye. Welcome to the programme, all of you. Rori, what do you think is going through the mind of the United Arab Emirates government that they can issue such a kind of catch-all list of terrorist groups?
I think that the announcement reflects the U.A.E.'s hatred of all political Islam, regardless of any shade it comes in. The list itself is quite vague. It's just a list of names. Some of the organisations haven't been contacted and so dispute whether they're even on it, including Al-Karama human rights group. So it's difficult to know how much to read into what this means, but it's certainly reflective of the UAE's position in the Middle East and how it's been part of this counter-revolutionary axis to try and roll back the changes of the Arab Spring.
Do you read it that way, Mohamed?
I just want to add that I think that they are waiting for the report of the committee to review the Muslim Brotherhood in Britain. And they waited for a long time, and then I think now they give up, and then they issue this kind of statements.
Because the Brotherhood's on the U.A.E. list.
Yeah.
But the investigation in Britain hasn't yet been concluded,
Yeah,
has it?
not yet, yes. And then this is what I'm telling you, that we know that the report being finished in the end of July, but it's released yet from the Britain UK government. The Britain government yet, and then they just do something instead of this. Just they want to say something about the Muslim Brotherhood in all over the world. They think that all these organizations are being linked with the Muslim Brotherhood, or maybe they've been directed with Muslim Brotherhood. But they should know that the majority of these organizations officially established either in the United States or in the UK, and it's official and under control, and everything has been very clear and transparency, except the Islamic Relief. They have a lot of branches everywhere in the world.
So, let me bring Cyrus in. Cyrus, how do you think this actually works, an announcement like this? Do you think it discredits the whole sort of dialogue about Islamic extremism, or do you think it adds to the background noise, and even though it's not, particularly credible in itself, it kind of adds to the general feeling that there's kind of something bad happening here?
No, that's interesting. I think at one level, it certainly discredits kind of the conversation around terrorism, about what is a terrorist, what is terrorism by definition. I think many of us, at least in the U.S., many of us, we had a laugh. A lot of us in this field, in these organizations, we had a good chuckle about such a body as the government, right? The rulers of the United Arab Emirates calling others a terrorist organization. But I appreciate what you said. I think it's more illustrative than anything else, even more so than any real effect that it might have, and that seems unclear right now about what effect it actually will have in terms of targeting the groups or the individuals that work for the groups. But I think it's just illustrative about where, as Mr. Donaghy said, where the United Arab Emirates defines itself, how it situates itself. Really, it seems like when you look at the types of groups, the broad ideologies really that they've set themselves up to oppose, it's really political Islam by every shade. It is really about narratives of Islam. It's an ideological issue for sure. I think it's worth mentioning now, and I'm sure we'll have time for it, some of the players, some of the cast of usual suspects that have found their way into this controversy, some of the Americans, the Islamophobes, some of the networks that seem to be part of creating this statement or facilitating this statement. But I think as far as the U.A.E. is concerned, I think it lets all of us know really where they stand, and that is important.
Rory, it's interesting that the Charities Commission in this country has obviously, in a way, distanced itself from this statement, saying it's not investigating it, because the Charities Commission itself now, under William Shawcross, is investigating what I think 20% of the charities it's investigating are Islamic charities of one description or another. So the fact that they are not investigating it means that the U.A.E. statement must be pretty out there.
Absolutely. I think, if anything, that gives it a clean bill of health, Islamic Relief. I think also, to be clear, that this was just a list from the U.A.E, and I don't know if Islamic Relief has even been contacted about the designation, what it means, if we even know if it is the charity, because it's so vague and it's just been put out there as a list of names. We couldn't possibly know what it will entail. Yeah.
Mohamed, do you think, talking about, as you were, the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood in the UK is still under a government investigation, when you hear a news story like this, do you think, even though it's not perhaps very credible, it does nevertheless lend the kind of, a background or a surrounding environment to that investigation, in which case it might be harmful, if not credible?
I think the report has already been finished, and it's released they already submitted to the government. And then, as I heard, that they will not let anyone to change what's been written in this report. But the atmosphere now is the media, and they said what happened. But they know as well that there is no democratic in United Arab Emirates. This country is trying to create new enemies to this country. Our region, the Middle East, now is firing a lot of terrorist organizations over there. They're not satisfied about what's going on. And then also, I believe that the way of peaceful struggling, maybe the young people, when they hear this, and then they will say that that's fine, then the peaceful struggling is not the right way to stop this kind of dictatorial regimes in our regions, or to bring back the democracy, or to stop the Arab Spring. Then I think it's very complicated, but what I'm saying, that it is a lot now they're creating a lot of enemies, and it's not good, even for the West. They should stop this kind of kidding. The right way is talking and bring back the dialogue not with this kind of forcing and issue every day this kind of statements that this group and this group. It is, again, it's the stability in the region as well.
Cyrus, I mean, with Islamic Relief, the British government last Ramadan matched every pound raised by Islamic Relief with a pound that it gave itself. So it's pretty embarrassing, isn't it, that the U.A.E. has designated this? I mean, if anybody were to accept this, they'd have to be accepting that the British government's been contributing to a terrorist organisation.
That you certainly raise an interesting issue. I can't imagine the U.A.E. adding the government of Britain to such a list either. I think when you look at the types of groups that they included in this, and there are some groups in it that are involved in militant activity, that are involved in open conflicts, of course. But when you look at Islamic Relief, which is a charity, an amazing humanitarian charity. When you look at MAS, which is the Muslim American Society, is a educational, a dawah organization, an Islamic organization, also provides social services. And CARE, which is defending the rights of Muslims. Civil rights, it's not even a huge human rights framework. Literally within the U.S. Constitution, defending the rights of people in the United States who are discriminated against. What are they opposing, really? It shows that, some people would call it political Islam. I think it's worth arguing, though, that this isn't really political work. This is the social dimension of Islam. They are opposing Islamic civil society, really wherever they find it, and that's very dangerous. This has real effect. We can laugh about it, and we do. It's worth chuckling about. We have to get our laughs where we can. The news is usually very bad, but it's important to note that this has effect. Not only does it, contribute to this fear mongering, which is very prevalent here in the U.S. I imagine you're dealing with similar dynamics in the U.K., but it also establishes a narrative of Islam that Islam and Islamic ethics are not welcome in the public sphere, and it's very dangerous, especially coming from a government which rules over a Muslim population and people look to as an authority.
Rory, I mean, that is true. There is a very serious side to this, one of which is, as Cyrus was suggesting, to eradicate ground on which civil libertarians might stand. But in doing that, it might be argued that you're playing into the hands of people who do want to commit terrorist activity, because they're going to turn around and say, look, these people, they won't stomach legitimate political activity.
I think the UAE's role in the region, especially in Egypt with the military coup last year, plays into that as well. I think if you make groups like the Muslim Brotherhood who engaged with democracy and you throw them out of power, you empower groups that want to commit terrorist acts, because they're able to say to young people, democracy doesn't work, they won't accept it, the only way is this way, and then violence ensues, and that's a really concerning thing.
I mean, that's a factor in the Egyptian situation, isn't it, now, that if you remove a democratically elected government and then ban the organisation of which he was a part, people will draw conclusions that you don't want them to draw, or you say you don't want them to draw.
But after 1 year and a half now, after the military coup took place in Egypt, I think that the majority of the Egyptian people feel what is the difference now. How the 1 year of democracy under the ruling of Morsi's era was very different. Free speech, no prisons, no raiding homes in the downs, and there were stability a little bit in the country. But we know that there were a counter-revolution there, deep state, yes, but still there were some kind of stability, some kind of justice. There is no this kind of court decisions like we hear right now. It's something crazy. Every day we hear about explosion there and there and there. Now I think the people start to feel what is the difference. And about the young people, it's very dangerous now. It's very, very dangerous.
Cyrus, is that a worry that you have in the States, that if you define practically everybody as terrorists, you're going to end up with more terrorists?
The list keeps growing. I think at every step of the process we've thought, well, the list can't get any bigger than this, otherwise they'll be searching all of us in the airport. But somehow year after year after year, the list gets exponentially bigger. So that doesn't seem to be a huge concern for them. I think they just like searching people. I think, though, I appreciate the point made by my colleagues, my brothers here, about throwing people out of politics. This is very important. If you think it's being ignored by Muslim youth around the world that ISIS has been able to keep power longer than Morsi did, then you're wrong. Like these are things that are absolutely relevant. This is a crucial discussion that we need to have. Are Muslims and Islamic ethics, are they welcome in the public sphere that is being defined by, let's call it the West? Of course, I was born and raised over here too, so I don't really believe in this West and East division. But this is very important. Egypt, last year, 2 years ago, was Gaza in 2006 and 2007, was Algeria in the 90s. This is just over and over again. People are being shown, Muslims are being shown that unless you agree and you facilitate Western imperialism, you're not welcome in democratic politics. And this is very, very dangerous. And I absolutely believe that this is a huge part in a growing militarization and a growing militarization of the Muslim youth, in how we think about how are we going to make the world better. All of this comes from a genuine place. People want to change their society for the better. Very few people are crazy, violent people running around who want to hurt people. I really think people want to make a positive change, but we need to make sure that there's a space for that. And the U.A.E. is certainly not part of the solution with things like this.
OK. Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for on this episode of The Report. I want to thank Mohamed Soudan, Cyrus Mcgoldrick, Rori Donaghy and the rest of my guests today for being on the show, and to thank you at home for watching it. And do remember, you can keep up with us by following the Twitter hashtag @IslamChannel, using the hashtag The Report. For now, we'll leave you with some scenes from the Mexico city of Iguala, where tens of thousands of people came out on Sunday night to peacefully protest at the government's inaction in the case of 43 missing students abducted by police in September. The students were handed over to a local gang who almost certainly murdered them. Well, we'll be back tomorrow, so do join us then. Good night.
Políticamente vivos.